Very blunt assessment of that attempted Christmas Day bombing of an American airliner. After hearing from his national security team yesterday, the president's bottom line was stark. The system failed.
When a suspected terrorist is able to board a plane with explosives on Christmas Day, the system has failed in a potentially disastrous way. The bottom line is this: the U.S. government had sufficient information to have uncovered this plot and potentially disrupt the Christmas Day attack. But our intelligence community failed to connect those dots, which would have placed the suspect on the no-fly list. That's not acceptable, and I will not tolerate it.
And for the Republican response, we are now joined from West Babylon, New York, by Congressman Peter King. He is the ranking Republican member of the Homeland Security Committee. And Congressman, welcome this morning. You know, you've been pretty tough on the administration since this failed bombing on Christmas. Are you more satisfied with what you heard from the president yesterday?
Somewhat, George. Let me make it clear. I am convinced the president is absolutely committed to fighting terrorism, to doing what has to be done. I just feel there's a disconnect between some of the intensity of his rhetoric and actually what he's proposing to do. For instance, he says yesterday that we didn't connect the dots. Well, it wasn't just not connecting the dots. There was at least one dot so large that we shouldn't have ignored it. And that's the one about the Nigerian banker coming into the American embassy and basically turning in his own son.
The question is then what to do about it now. The president didn't pull any punches in his analysis yesterday, yet at the same time, he had his staff say that the president still has full confidence in all of his top security officials. Do you see a disconnect there, and do you think it's necessary for the president to prove his point that none of this will be tolerated, that someone is going to have to lose their job?
Yeah, George, I'm generally not the type of person who says people should lose their jobs. I don't get any relish in that. However, having said that, in this situation, if the situation is as bad as the president says it was, as far as so many dots not being connected, so many obvious mistakes being made, that I would think once the president has set that stage, that to show that he's serious, someone will have to go. Now, who it's going to go, I don't know.
Who should it be?
Again, it's going to... George, you know, there's so many moving parts here, and the administration, by the way, has not been very forthcoming in telling Congress what happened, how it happened, when it happened. So I'm not in a full position right now to say. It could be the Secretary of Homeland Security, then we also have the CIA, we have the DNI, we have the NSA, we have the NCTC, we have all of these, we have actually people in the White House themselves. All of those could have played more or less of a part, and that's been kept pretty close to the vest. The president has not disclosed anything, and I can tell you this administration tells very little, unlike previous administrations.
But you are saying that someone should be held accountable. Name one other specific recommendation the president could implement right now to fix this.
I think one main thing would be to just himself, to use the word terrorism more often. Having said that, I would say that any time we get any reasonably credible evidence on anyone at all, that they should go on at least a secondary screening list and be subject to a pat-down, and also to have to be subject to a body scan. This is not a court of law where you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a person is guilty. Also, I think the most important thing he can do right now is to send a signal by putting people such as Abdul Muttalib into a military tribunal rather than the criminal justice system. If this is a war on terrorism, then this person should not be treated as an ordinary criminal.
Quick political question. We saw overnight Senator Chris Dodd, Democrat in Connecticut, not running again. Senator Byron Dorgan, Democrat in North Dakota, not running again. A lot of people look at this and see Republican opportunities in 2010. You've been looking at the Senate seat here in New York to challenge the Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. You going to jump into that race?
George, I'll be deciding in the next week or so. Right now, I'm leaning against it, to be honest with you. I'm in a position in the House of Representatives, being on the Homeland Security Committee, which means so much to New York City, to Long Island. And I think we're going to take the House back this year, which would hopefully make me the chairman of the committee, and I'd be in a position to get more done. So right now, that's where I'm leaning. But, George, you'll be among the first to know.
Okay, Congressman King, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, George.
Underscoring what we heard from John Carl before, a flat prediction here, Republicans are going to take over the House.
Yeah, we heard it. All right, we have new...
Thanks, Harry. Joining us now is Republican Congressman Peter King. He is the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee. Good morning, Congressman King.
Good morning, Maggie.
We just heard Mr. McDonough say that everybody at that meeting yesterday is taking responsibility for this failure and upping their game now after the stumble. Do you think that's enough, or do you think that we should have been upping our game before? Do you think that somebody does need to be held specifically accountable so that there's a message sent here that there are consequences to a failure of this magnitude?
Yes, this was more than a stumble. This was really a glaring error. And, you know, I understand mistakes can be made, but this was such a glaring one. For instance, when you have the Nigerian banker walk into the American embassy and, in effect, turn his own son in and have no action taken on that, and as recently as this past Sunday, having the president's chief advisor, John Brennan, say that was not a smoking gun. So I don't think they've learned the lessons from this. And as far as accountability, and Mr. McDonough, I have a great respect for, but he's saying it won't be the usual Washington blame game. Anyone who read the papers last week saw every one of those federal agencies involved, CIA, DNI, NCTC, all of them pointing fingers at one another. And there is, I believe, a breakdown in unity in the intelligence community. I mean, for the last 6 or 7 months, there's been a real breakdown between the DNI and the CIA, for instance. The president has to resolve that. And also, I think he has to take some firm steps here, not just sound tough, but I think he should, first of all, declare Abdul Muttalib to be an enemy combatant, not put him in the criminal system where he gets Miranda rights, and he should also end this whole sending terrorists back to countries from Guantanamo. I think closing Guantanamo was a big mistake, but to be even considering sending terrorists back to Yemen the way he was until just yesterday.
He said he won't anymore, exactly.
Yeah, but why? I mean, for the last year at least, Yemen has become a center in the war against terrorism, and yet, again, just 3 days ago, his Homeland Security advisor said they're going to continue to send people back. So it seems to me that the president is like a day or two behind on all these.
Congressman, here you are, a Republican, talking about everything that's wrong and everything that went wrong. I want to read to you from today's New York Times. Tom Kean, who is the co-chairman of the 9/11 Commission, said, quote, "We should dismiss the partisan bickering over the security failures over this issue. Both parties have presided over security failures and successes." Do you agree, and do you say to your colleagues, let's try to support the president here and get to the bottom of the real issue?
Yeah, Maggie, I lost many friends and neighbors on September 11th. I have never made one partisan statement on terrorism since that day. And let me just say, I've given the president credit. I think he's doing the right thing in Yemen. I think he's doing the right thing in Afghanistan. I think he's doing the right thing in extending the Patriot Act. I just think there are disconnects in his policy. That's what I'm being critical of. Now, I strongly supported President Bush, but no one was more critical of the administration when they went into the deal with Dubai ports, which I thought threatened our security, or when they cut back on aid to New York City. So this is not partisan. Others may be partisan. I'm not. I will give the president credit. I think he's right. But on the other hand, when mistakes are being made, I think it's my obligation to speak out, because this issue is so vital to all Americans, especially anyone who comes from New York.
It is vital. No one will disagree with that. Congressman Peter King, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome. All right, let's go to Russ Mitchell. He's at the news.